I hate being an ugly woman in the workforce. They promoted her over me for the third time in 2 years, and I finally realized the truth that's been staring me in the face my entire career. Being unattractive means your talent will never be enough. I've watched younger, prettier, less qualified women leap over me like I'm invisible, and the worst part is that I actually am invisible to everyone who matters. My name is Amanda Torres, I'm 32 years old, and I've spent 7 years at Westfield Creative Solutions watching my career die a slow death because I don't look like the women who succeed here. This isn't about self-pity or making excuses. This is about the brutal reality that no one wants to admit: appearance trumps ability, and I'm living proof of it every single day. When I first started at Westfield Creative Solutions 7 years ago, I thought I'd found my place in the world. The company was mid-sized, established, with a reputation for solid client work and reasonable employee treatment. During my interview with Michael Westfield himself, the company's managing partner, I felt like I'd finally found somewhere that valued substance over style. "Amanda, your portfolio is impressive," Michael had said, flipping through my college projects and internship work. "Your campaign concepts show real strategic thinking. We need people who understand that marketing isn't just about pretty pictures, it's about psychology, timing, and genuine connection with audiences." I remember feeling like I could breathe for the first time in months of job hunting. Here was a place that seemed to care about what I could do, not what I looked like doing it. The office was clean and professional, filled with people who seemed focused on their work rather than posturing for attention. There were women in senior positions, diverse teams, and an atmosphere that felt meritocratic. "I'm really excited about the opportunity to grow here," I told Michael. "I know I can contribute meaningfully to your team's success." And for the first couple of years, it seemed like I was right. I threw myself into every project with the dedication of someone who'd finally found their calling. I worked late, came in early, volunteered for difficult accounts, and consistently delivered results that exceeded expectations. My campaigns increased client retention rates, my strategic recommendations saved accounts that were about to walk, and my attention to detail caught errors that would have cost the company thousands. My supervisor at the time, Janet Phillips, was a woman in her 50s who seemed to appreciate competence over appearances. During my first performance review, she pulled no punches with her praise. "Amanda, you're exactly the kind of employee we hoped you'd be when we hired you," Janet said, reviewing my metrics. "Your client satisfaction scores are among the highest in the department, you've never missed a deadline, and frankly, you make my job easier because I never have to worry about your work." Those early days felt like validation of everything I'd believed about how the world worked. Work hard, be reliable, produce quality results, and you'll be rewarded. It seemed so simple, so fair, so obviously true that I never questioned whether there might be other factors at play. But then Janet retired, and everything changed. Her replacement was Thomas Crawford, a man in his early 40s who'd been brought in from a competitor with promises of fresh energy and innovative approaches to team dynamics. From the moment he started, I noticed subtle shifts in how our department operated. "I want to see more collaboration," Thomas announced during his first team meeting. "Marketing is about connection, and that starts with how we connect with each other. I want people who can represent our brand not just in their work, but in how they present themselves to clients and colleagues." I should have seen the warning signs in that speech, but I was still operating under the assumption that presenting yourself well meant being professional, articulate, and prepared. I had no idea that he was talking about something entirely different. The first sign that my understanding was wrong came during a client presentation 3 months into Thomas's tenure. I'd spent weeks preparing a comprehensive rebranding strategy for one of our biggest accounts, a regional restaurant chain looking to expand nationally. The presentation was flawless, detailed market research, compelling visual concepts, and a rollout timeline that accounted for every possible contingency. But when we walked into that conference room, Thomas made a decision that blindsided me completely. "Actually, Amanda, I'd like Jessica to take the lead on presenting today," he said, gesturing to Jessica Hamilton, a 26-year-old junior associate who'd been hired just 4 months earlier. "I think her perspective on the demographic trends will really resonate with the client." Jessica was everything I wasn't: tall, blonde, impeccably styled, with the kind of effortless beauty that made people stop mid-sentence when she walked into a room. She was also completely unprepared to present my work. "Oh, okay," Jessica said, clearly caught off guard. She'd attended our prep meetings but hadn't been briefed on leading the presentation. "So, we have this really cool rebranding concept that Amanda put together." For the next 45 minutes, I watched Jessica stumble through my research, mispronounce key demographic terms, and fumble basic questions about implementation timelines. Every instinct I had screamed at me to jump in and save the presentation, but Thomas kept shooting me warning looks whenever I opened my mouth. The clients looked confused, underwhelmed, and by the end of the meeting, I was certain we'd lost the account. But then something happened that I still don't fully understand. As we were packing up, the client's CEO, a man named Robert Chen, approached Jessica with a smile I'd never seen him direct at me during our previous meetings. "Jessica, I have to say, your passion for this project really comes through," he said. "I'd love to continue this conversation over dinner sometime. You know, to discuss the finer points of the campaign." 2 weeks later, we not only kept the account but expanded it. And Jessica got the credit. "Great job on the Chen account," Thomas told her during our next team meeting. "That's exactly the kind of client relationship building we need more of around here." I sat there in stunned silence, watching my colleagues nod approvingly at Jessica's success. The work was mine. The strategy was mine. The research was mine. But the recognition, the relationship, and eventually the commission bonus, all Jessica's. That's when I started paying attention to patterns I'd been too naive to notice before. In meetings, when I spoke, people checked their phones. When Jessica spoke, they leaned forward. When I suggested ideas, they were met with non-committal nods. When she repeated those same ideas 5 minutes later, suddenly they were brilliant and exactly what we needed to hear. I began documenting everything. Not because I planned to file complaints or make accusations, but because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't going crazy. I kept detailed records of my contributions to projects, my client satisfaction scores, my innovative suggestions, and how they were received versus how similar contributions from other team members were acknowledged. The data was devastating and undeniable. Over the course of 18 months, I had contributed core concepts to 12 major campaigns. In the final presentations, I was credited as the primary strategist on 3 of them. Jessica, who had been there half as long and had contributed primarily aesthetic suggestions and client schmoozing, was credited as lead on 7 campaigns that quarter. But it wasn't just Jessica. The pattern extended to every attractive woman in our department. There was Caroline Walsh, a 28-year-old with Instagram-perfect makeup and a wardrobe that probably cost more than my yearly salary. She'd been promoted to senior associate after just 18 months, despite having what our team privately called the Caroline errors, consistent mistakes in budget calculations that I always ended up catching and fixing. "I don't understand how she keeps getting these opportunities," my cubicle neighbor, Marcus Kim, whispered to me one afternoon after we'd spent our lunch break correcting another one of Caroline's spreadsheets. "I mean, she's nice and all, but what?" I asked, though I already knew what he was going to say. "But you've been doing her job better than she has for 2 years. It doesn't make sense." It made perfect sense, actually. It just wasn't the kind of sense that anyone wanted to acknowledge out loud. The breaking point came last month when our department was restructured to include team leader positions, essentially junior management roles that would oversee specific client portfolios and mentor junior staff. It was exactly the kind of promotion I'd been working toward for 7 years. I prepared for weeks. I compiled portfolios of my successful campaigns, gathered testimonials from satisfied clients, and prepared presentations on my leadership philosophy and strategic vision for the department's future. I'd been at the company longer than any other candidate, had the strongest performance metrics, and had already been informally mentoring newer employees for years. The other candidates were Jessica, Caroline, and Brianna Parker, a 25-year-old who'd been hired 6 months earlier and still needed help navigating our internal project management system. During my interview with the promotion committee, I felt confident and prepared. I presented my achievements clearly, outlined specific plans for improving team efficiency, and answered every question with the depth that comes from 7 years of hands-on experience. "Amanda, your institutional knowledge is really valuable," said Linda Morrison, the HR director. "You've been such a reliable presence in this department." Reliable. Institutional knowledge. These weren't the words of someone about to be promoted. These were the words of someone being managed toward acceptance of disappointment. But I held on to hope until the very end. Maybe this time, competence would actually matter. Maybe 7 years of consistent excellence would finally be rewarded. Maybe I'd been wrong about everything I'd been noticing. The announcement came during our weekly team meeting. Thomas stood at the front of the conference room with what I now recognize as barely concealed excitement. "I'm pleased to announce that after careful consideration, we've selected Brianna Parker as our new team leader for the consumer goods portfolio." The words hit me like a physical blow. Brianna. 6 months of experience. Still learning our systems. Still making the kind of rookie mistakes that cost time and money. "Brianna brings fresh energy and innovative thinking to the role," Thomas continued. "Her collaborative approach and natural leadership abilities make her the perfect fit for guiding our team into the next phase of growth." I looked around the room at my colleagues' faces. Some looked genuinely surprised. Others, particularly the men, were nodding approvingly. A few of my female colleagues looked uncomfortable, their eyes darting between me and Brianna with expressions I couldn't quite read. But what struck me most was Brianna herself. She looked shocked. Not pleased or proud or excited, shocked. Like she couldn't believe what was happening either. After the meeting, I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I didn't cry, I was beyond crying. I just sat there trying to process the reality that had become undeniable. 7 years of exemplary work, and I'd been passed over for someone who still asked me how to export reports from our analytics platform. When I finally emerged, I found Caroline waiting by the sinks. "Amanda, I just wanted to say," she started, then trailed off, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "What?" I asked. "I don't know. This just feels wrong. You should have gotten that promotion. Everyone knows you should have gotten it. But everyone also knows why I didn't," I replied. Caroline looked at me in the mirror, and for a moment, I saw something like recognition in her eyes. Then she looked away. "Maybe you should talk to HR," she said quietly. "And say what?" "That I think I'm being discriminated against because I'm not pretty enough." "Well, are you?" The question hung in the air between us. Neither of us answered it, but we both knew the truth. That night, I went home to my small apartment and did something I'd been avoiding for months. I looked at myself, really looked, in the full-length mirror in my bedroom. What I saw was a woman who'd been lying to herself about what the world sees when they look at her. I'm 5'4" and about 40 pounds overweight, with a body that's soft in all the ways that fashion magazines tell us we shouldn't be. My skin breaks out regularly, stress acne that leaves marks I can't seem to get rid of no matter what products I try. My hair is fine and thin, and despite my best efforts with drugstore styling products, it always looks slightly unkempt by noon. My clothes come from discount stores because after paying student loans, helping with my mother's medical bills, and covering basic living expenses, there's not much left for the kind of wardrobe that makes an impression. I wear the same 3 blazers in rotation, paired with simple pants and sensible shoes that don't hurt my feet during long days at the office. I don't wear much makeup because I never learned how to apply it properly, and the few times I've tried to copy looks from YouTube tutorials, I've ended up looking like I'm playing dress up in someone else's face. My idea of skincare is drugstore moisturizer and hoping for the best. But the thing that hits hardest when I really examine myself is the recognition that I've become invisible in the way that certain women become invisible. I'm the woman people look through, not at. I'm background noise in conversations where prettier women are the main attraction. I thought about all the ways this invisibility has shaped my life, both inside and outside of work. I've never had a boyfriend. Not one. 32 years old, and I've never experienced what it feels like to have someone choose me, want me, fight for me. I've been on exactly 3 dates in my entire life, all setups through friends who felt sorry for me, and each one ended with polite excuses about not feeling a connection. At work, men interrupt me constantly. They'll cut me off mid-sentence to ask Jessica or Caroline what they think about the exact point I was making. During client meetings, they address their questions to the attractive women on our team, even when I'm the one who prepared the materials and can actually answer their questions. Other women don't see me as competition, which sounds like it should be a good thing but actually isn't. When the attractive women in our office talk about workplace harassment or unwanted attention, they never include me in those conversations. Not because they're being deliberately exclusive, but because it never occurs to them that I might have insights about navigating workplace dynamics as a woman. Because I don't navigate them as a woman, I navigate them as a non-entity. I think about the small moments that other people probably don't even notice. The way conversations pause when beautiful women walk by, but continue without missing a beat when I pass. The way service workers make eye contact and smile at my prettier colleagues but look past me like I'm not there. The way I've learned to position myself strategically in group photos so I won't ruin the aesthetic. The most crushing realization is that this isn't new. I've been living this reality for years, but I convinced myself it was about other things. I thought I wasn't getting promoted because I wasn't assertive enough, so I worked on being more vocal in meetings. I thought I wasn't networking effectively, so I forced myself to attend more company social events. I thought I wasn't presenting my achievements clearly, so I documented everything obsessively. But the problem was never my approach or my attitude or my communication style. The problem is that I don't look like someone who deserves success. The week after Brianna's promotion, I started paying attention to how she was settling into her new role. What I discovered was both predictable and infuriating. She scheduled individual meetings with each team member to get to know everyone better and understand current project workflows. When she met with me, she spent 45 minutes asking detailed questions about processes I'd been managing for years. "So when you're coordinating with the design team, what's the typical turnaround time?" Brianna asked, taking notes on her tablet. It depends on the complexity of the request, I explained. For simple modifications, usually 24 to 48 hours. For complete redesigns, I build in at least a week, sometimes 2 if it's during busy season. And how do you track revisions? I maintain a shared spreadsheet that logs all requests, deadlines, current status, and final delivery dates. It's linked to our main project management system so everyone stays updated automatically. Can you show me how to access that? For the next 20 minutes, I walked her through systems I'd helped develop, processes I'd streamlined, and organizational methods I'd implemented to make our team more efficient. She took careful notes on everything, asking thoughtful questions that made it clear she had no prior knowledge of how our department actually functioned. 2 days later, in our team meeting, Brianna presented new efficiency initiatives that were essentially rebranded versions of systems I'd been running for years. I've been analyzing our workflow processes, she announced, and I think we can improve our design coordination significantly. I'm implementing a new tracking system that will give us better visibility into project timelines. She pulled up a presentation that outlined her organizational improvements, the same spreadsheet system I'd shown her, with minor cosmetic changes and a new title. This is exactly what we needed, Thomas said approvingly. Great strategic thinking, Brianna. I sat there watching my own work being presented as innovative leadership, and I finally understood something that changed how I see everything. Competence without attractiveness is just unpaid labor that pretty women get credit for. But the most painful part wasn't the plagiarism, it was watching how differently the same ideas were received when they came from someone who looked like a leader rather than someone who looked like me. When I had suggested similar improvements over the years, they were met with responses like, "That's interesting, Amanda," or "We'll take that into consideration." When Brianna presented identical concepts, they were revolutionary insights that demonstrated her natural leadership abilities. After that meeting, Marcus caught up with me in the hallway. "That was your system she just presented, wasn't it?" he asked quietly. "It doesn't matter," I replied. "Of course it matters. You should say something." "To who?" "About what?" "That the pretty new team leader is doing exactly what everyone expects pretty new team leaders to do." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "It's not about—" "Yes, it is," I interrupted. "It's about exactly what you think it's about, and we both know it, and there's nothing I can do about it." He didn't argue, because there was no argument to make. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I started looking for a new job. Not because I thought things would be different somewhere else, I'm not that naive anymore. But because I needed to know if this pattern was specific to Westfield Creative Solutions or if it was just how the world works for women who look like me. The job search process was its own education in the reality I'd been trying to ignore. I applied to 37 positions over 2 months. I got callbacks for 6 interviews. Of those 6, 5 were for positions that were lateral moves or slight downgrades from my current role, despite my 7 years of experience and proven track record. The interviews themselves followed predictable patterns. I was always prepared, articulate, and confident. I presented my portfolio professionally, answered questions thoroughly, and demonstrated extensive knowledge of industry trends and best practices. And I was consistently described afterward as a solid candidate who would be a reliable addition to the team. Never exceptional. Never dynamic. Never someone they were excited about hiring. The one interview that felt different was with a small boutique agency run by 2 women in their 50s. Sarah Hendricks and Maria Santos had started their own company after leaving larger firms, and during our conversation, I felt like I was finally talking to people who understood what competence looked like. "Your campaign results are impressive," Sarah said, reviewing my portfolio. "This client retention strategy you developed, walk me through your thinking process." For the next hour, we had the kind of detailed professional discussion I'd been craving for years. They asked insightful questions about my methodologies, challenged my assumptions in productive ways, and seemed genuinely interested in my strategic thinking rather than my ability to charm clients over dinner. "Amanda, you're clearly someone who understands this business deeply," Maria said at the end of our meeting. "We'll be in touch soon." I left that interview feeling hopeful for the first time in months. Finally, I thought, people who valued substance over style. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Sarah. "Amanda, we were really impressed with your qualifications and experience," she began, and my heart started to sink because I recognized the tone. "Unfortunately, we've decided to go with someone who's a better fit for our current team dynamic." "Can I ask what that means?" I said. There was a long pause. "We're a client-facing business, and we need people who can represent our brand in the marketplace. I'm sure you understand." I understood perfectly. That conversation was the moment I stopped pretending this was about anything other than what it was. I wasn't being passed over because of my communication style or my strategic approach or my leadership potential. I was being passed over because I don't look like the kind of person clients want to have lunch with. I went back to Westfield Creative Solutions and threw myself into my work with a different kind of energy. Not the hopeful energy of someone trying to prove herself, but the mechanical energy of someone who finally understands her place in the system. I did excellent work because that's what I do. I supported Brianna's leadership because that's what was expected. I corrected Caroline's mistakes because someone had to. I attended team meetings and offered insights that were met with polite acknowledgement and then attributed to more attractive colleagues 5 minutes later. And I documented everything. Not for legal action or formal complaints, but for my own sanity. I needed proof that I wasn't imagining the patterns I was seeing. I needed evidence that my competence was real, even if it was invisible to everyone who mattered. The documentation became its own kind of revelation. Over 7 years, I had led strategy development for 43 major campaigns, 38 of which exceeded client expectations and resulted in contract renewals or expansions. In our internal tracking system, I was credited as primary strategist on 19 of them. Mentored 11 junior employees, 7 of whom had been promoted above me. Implemented 6 major process improvements that increased department efficiency and reduced project completion times. 3 were eventually attributed to other team members in official company documentation. Maintained client satisfaction scores consistently in the 95th percentile, despite rarely being included in client relationship management activities. Generated approximately $1.8 million in additional revenue through strategic recommendations and campaign optimizations. My annual bonus never reflected these contributions proportionally. Looking at the numbers, I realized something that was both validating and devastating. I was objectively excellent at my job. This wasn't imposter syndrome or self-doubt or failure to advocate for myself effectively. This was systematic devaluation of competence that didn't come wrapped in an attractive package. But what hurt most wasn't the professional impact, it was the personal toll of being invisible. I started noticing how much mental energy I spent trying to make myself more palatable. I'd developed a speaking style designed to be unthreatening and collaborative. I'd learned to present my ideas as questions rather than statements. I'd perfected the art of making my insights sound like natural discoveries rather than prepared expertise. I was wondering if maybe we should consider, rather than, I recommend that we. What do you think about the possibility of, rather than, the data clearly shows we need to. I might be wrong, but it seems like, rather than, based on my analysis. I'd been slowly erasing myself from my own professional contributions, and I hadn't even realized I was doing it. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago during a presentation to our biggest client. We were pitching a comprehensive rebranding strategy that I'd been developing for 2 months. It was some of the best work I'd ever done, sophisticated market research, innovative creative concepts, and a rollout plan that balanced ambition with practical implementation. But as we prepared for the meeting, Thomas made another one of his executive decisions. I think Caroline should take the lead on this presentation, he announced. Her energy really connects with this particular client base. Caroline looked as surprised as I felt. I mean, I can do it, but Amanda knows this strategy inside and out. She's been working on it exclusively. Amanda will be there to support with technical details, Thomas said. But Caroline, I want you to focus on the big picture vision. That's where you really shine. The presentation was a disaster. Caroline had attended our prep meetings, but she didn't understand the research methodology behind our recommendations. When the client asked about demographic targeting, she gave vague answers about reaching the right people with the right message. When they questioned our budget allocations, she looked to me for help while trying to maintain the illusion that she was leading the discussion. Maybe Amanda can walk us through the numbers, she finally said, 20 minutes into what should have been her presentation. I stepped in and salvaged what I could, but the damage was done. The client could see that Caroline didn't understand the strategy she was supposedly presenting. They could see that I was the person who actually knew what we were talking about. And they could see that our company had made a bizarre decision to have the wrong person leading the conversation. We lost the account. 2 days later, Thomas called me into his office. Amanda, I want to talk about what happened in the Johnson presentation, he said. Okay, I replied, genuinely curious about how he was going to frame this conversation. I think there was some confusion about roles and responsibilities that made the client uncomfortable. What kind of confusion? Well, Caroline was supposed to be leading the discussion, but you kept jumping in with corrections and additional information. It made the whole presentation feel disjointed. I stared at him. Caroline didn't know the material. She couldn't answer their questions. She would have figured it out if you'd given her space to work through it. Instead, you undermined her authority by constantly stepping in to fix things. I was trying to save the account. By making Caroline look incompetent? The conversation was so surreal that I almost laughed. I was being blamed for Caroline's failure to understand work that I had done. I was being criticized for knowing my own material too well. I was being accused of undermining someone who had been set up to fail by being asked to present strategy she hadn't developed and didn't understand. So what you're saying, I said slowly, is that I should have let Caroline fail completely rather than try to help her succeed. I'm saying that part of being a team player is knowing when to step back and let others lead, even if you think you could do it better. Even if I think I could do it better. Not even if I actually can do it better, or even if I did do it better. Even if I think I could. That's when I understood the final piece of this puzzle. It wasn't just that attractive women were being promoted over me. It was that my competence was being reframed as a character flaw. My expertise was arrogance. My reliability was rigidity. My standards were perfectionism that made others uncomfortable. I was being punished for being good at my job while not being pretty enough to make that competence palatable. I understand, I told Thomas. Good. I'm glad we could clear this up. But we hadn't cleared anything up. We'd just confirmed what I'd been refusing to acknowledge for 7 years. That night, I called my college roommate, Patricia Williams, who now works in corporate recruiting for a Fortune 500 company. I told her everything, the promotions I'd been passed over for, the presentations I'd been excluded from leading, the systematic pattern of attractive women being advanced over more qualified candidates. Mandy, she said, using my old college nickname, this is going to sound harsh, but I need to tell you something about how hiring and promotion really work. Okay. Companies don't just hire competence. They hire the complete package. And part of that package is being someone that clients, colleagues, and leadership want to spend time with. You mean being attractive? I mean being appealing. Which includes attractiveness, but also charisma, social skills, and yes, physical presentation. So you're saying that because I'm not pretty enough, I don't deserve advancement opportunities? I'm saying that whether it's fair or not, appearance matters in client-facing roles. And it matters more for women than for men, and it matters more in creative industries than in technical ones. That's illegal discrimination. Prove it. Show me the policy that says, we don't promote ugly women. Show me the email that says, choose the prettier candidate. Show me anything explicit rather than a pattern that could be explained by personality fit, communication style, or leadership potential. She was right, and we both knew it. So what am I supposed to do? I asked. You have 3 options, Patricia said. Accept that this is how things work and find ways to succeed within the system. Try to change your presentation to be more competitive. Or find a role where your appearance matters less. What does that look like, changing my presentation? Lose weight. Learn to do makeup properly. Invest in a better wardrobe. Get your hair professionally styled. Basically, invest in becoming more conventionally attractive. And if I can't do that? Or don't want to? Then find a different kind of role. Back office work. Technical specialization. Freelance consulting where most interaction is remote. Essentially, hide. Essentially, play to your strengths instead of fighting battles you can't win. The conversation left me feeling empty rather than angry. Patricia wasn't being cruel, she was being honest about how the world actually works rather than how we pretend it works. But it also crystallized something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I don't want to transform myself into someone more palatable to a system that devalues who I actually am. I don't want to spend my money, time, and mental energy trying to become pretty enough to deserve recognition for work I'm already doing excellently. And I don't want to hide in roles that are deemed appropriate for women who look like me. What I want is for people to acknowledge what we all already know but won't say out loud. Appearance significantly impacts professional opportunities, especially for women, and pretending otherwise is just another way of maintaining systems that benefit some people while excluding others. I'm not looking for pity or special treatment. I'm not asking anyone to lower standards or make exceptions. I'm asking for honesty about what the standards actually are, so that those of us who don't meet them can make informed decisions about our careers instead of wasting years believing that merit alone will be enough. 3 days ago, I made a decision that surprised even me. I scheduled a meeting with Thomas to discuss my career development. I've been thinking about my role here and my long-term goals, I told him. That's great, Amanda. Self-reflection is always valuable. I'd like to transition into a more behind-the-scenes strategic role. Less client interaction, more focus on research, analysis, and process development. He looked genuinely pleased. That sounds like it could be a perfect fit for your skill set. You've always been more comfortable with the technical aspects of our work. More comfortable. As if my exclusion from client-facing opportunities had been my choice rather than a systematic pattern of being deemed unsuitable for public representation. I think it would allow me to contribute most effectively to the team, I said. Absolutely. And it opens up opportunities for some of our more dynamic team members to take on expanded client relationship roles. Dynamic. Another euphemism for attractive. But here's the thing, I'm genuinely good at strategic work. I enjoy research and analysis. I take satisfaction in developing systems that make other people's jobs easier. And if that's where I can build a successful career without constantly fighting battles I can't win, then maybe that's not defeat. Maybe that's strategy. The conversation confirmed what I'd already known. There's no amount of competence that will make me suitable for the kind of roles that go to women who look like Jessica and Caroline and Brianna. But there might be ways to build a career that values what I'm actually good at rather than punishing me for what I'm not. I'm still at Westfield Creative Solutions. I'm still watching less qualified but more attractive women get promoted above me. I'm still correcting their mistakes and supporting their success while remaining invisible myself. But I'm no longer pretending that this is about anything other than what it is. I'm no longer telling myself that if I just work harder, speak up more, or advocate for myself better, things will change. I'm no longer believing that merit alone will eventually be recognized and rewarded appropriately. Instead, I'm planning a career that works with reality rather than against it. I hate being an ugly woman in the workforce, but I'm learning to navigate that reality strategically rather than letting it destroy me emotionally. I'm documenting my contributions not because I expect credit, but because I need to maintain my own sense of competence and value in a system designed to make me invisible. And I'm telling this story not because I want sympathy, but because I want other women who are living this reality to know they're not imagining it, they're not failing, and they're not alone. The world tells us that if we're not getting ahead, it's because we're not working hard enough, not advocating for ourselves effectively, or not demonstrating leadership potential clearly enough. But sometimes the truth is simpler and more brutal. We're not getting ahead because we don't look like the kind of people who get ahead. Acknowledging that reality doesn't mean accepting it permanently or giving up on professional success. It means making strategic decisions based on accurate information rather than false hope. I may never be the face of our company or the person clients want to have lunch with, but I can be the person who develops the strategies that make everyone else successful, who solves the problems that no one else wants to tackle, and who builds systems that outlast prettier people's tenures. It's not the career I imagined when I graduated college full of optimism about meritocracy and hard work paying off. But it's a career I can build successfully once I stop fighting the reality of what professional advancement actually requires in a world that judges women's competence through the lens of their appearance. I hate being an ugly woman in the workforce. But I'm learning that hate can be fuel for strategic thinking rather than just fuel for self-destruction. And maybe that's enough.